Aloha mai kākou, and welcome to this amazing panel presentation today. And we're doing this on behalf of La Hoihoi Ea, that is being celebrated next weekend on July 31st. There's a whole bunch of activities that are happening that started at the beginning of July that will go all the way through July 31st, all in celebration of our national holiday, La Hoihoi Ea, which will culminate in activities throughout the Pai'aina. Right? From Kauai all the way to Hawaii Island, there'll be activities. You should check your own communities if you guys are doing something to celebrate La Hoihoi Ea. And here, of course, the celebration occurs and the commemoration occurs at Thomas Square. But today, I am so happy and honored to present a panel with these distinguished and amazing people, goddesses, if you will, on the subject and the topic of ʻīlioʻulaokalani. Now, ʻīlioʻulaokalani was a movement that was started in early 1997. And kumu hula were brought together from throughout the Pai'aina to fight a particular piece of legislation that was going through the legislature at that time that threatened the traditional and customary practices and access rights of cultural practitioners. And it really kind of zeroed in for hula people, for us, it zeroed in on the practices that we do to keep our practice alive, right? The very essence of what it is that we do and our relationship with Aina and with Kai and with Vai was being threatened by this piece of legislation. Yeah, and these brave women, along with their compadres, their hoa, right, hoa kumu, came together to not only, well, at that time, came together to fight this piece of legislation, but more so, what the result was an awakening of sorts within the hula community and throughout the Pai'aina and abroad in the role of cultural practices and the nexus where it intersects with the political, advocacy, and civic engagement arenas. Yeah, it was not the first time, because we've seen parts of this come through in the Kaho'olawe movement, of course, also in the Iwi Kupuna movement in the early 90s, or of course Kaho'olawe in the late 70s through the 80s, the Iwi Kupuna movement in the early 90s, in the late 80s and early 90s, and then of course ʻīlioʻulaokalani happening in the late 90s, circa 1997, right? But it was one of the first times where there was a mass call and a mass engagement that took place for the first time, but not the last time, in 1997 on Oahu at the state legislature and at the what we call the Square Building in downtown Honolulu. But, however, let me introduce our special guest today. Right, from the island of Hawaii, we have a renowned kumu hula who herself and her family, from her mother all the way down to her great-grandchildren, are involved not only in keeping our cultural practices alive through hula and keeping their mo'oku'auhau alive and accessible to what they've made accessible to the entirety of our lahui through the chants and through hula, time and time again, right? And from that family velo, right, has come down, and this woman, I've been so honored to be able to share in a lot of that learning, and so have thousands and thousands and thousands of you, right, through the work that this family and this woman has done for all of us. Yeah, none other than kumu hula Pualani Kanakaole Kanahele. Aloha, Auntie Pua. And then from the island of Maui, we have, again, another kumu hula who has herself and with her work, not only on the island of Maui, and we call her Mama Maui for a reason, because anything that happens on Maui that has to do with the protection and perpetuation of our cultural practices, she has her, definitely has her hands in it, and her mind and her heart, all into supporting the efforts that have gone on from many years ago all up until now. And her work with Kaho'olawe also, and till today in perpetuating education at all different levels, right? From the Punana Leo to the Napua No'eau to the Maui Community College to Halau, to also being one of those instigators that has allowed the accessibility of our culture to spread beyond just her own pu'ulu, and beyond. None other than kumu hula Hokulani Holt, from again, island of Maui. Aloha, Hoku. And now to the island of Oahu. Yeah, I didn't realize this was going to be a pageant of islands. Yeah, but it is. It's working out perfectly. Yeah, all we need is one Kauai person, and you know, and then we'll be all good. From the island of Oahu, a kumu hula who has definitely taken on the torch of being one of those people that when she walks into the square building at the state legislature, right, she has senators and representatives and governors and mayors all rattled with her presence, because she has become such a force in advocating again in protection and perpetuation of our cultural practices and beyond. And none other than kumu hula Vicky Holt-Takamine. Aloha, Auntie Vicky.
Aloha.
Yeah, okay, so now I got the introductions all done. One of the reasons why we wanted to have this discussion during La Hoihoi Ea was because this ʻīlioʻulaokalani was and is one of those inspirations for that Hoihoi Ea, right? For that return of our ea to our people, right? And one of those initiatives that was kind of like just started, you know, that spark and that fire that still burns till today, right? That fire, that flame is still continuing on to this day with what was, you know, nurtured and kind of created and stoked back there in 1997. So my first question to all of you is who and or what is ʻīlioʻulaokalani?
Go ahead, Vicky. Why don't you kick it off?
Okay, so in 1997, the state legislature introduced two bills, Senate Bill 8 and House Bill 1920, that would restrict Native Hawaiian gathering rights, and not just Native Hawaiian gathering rights, but gathering rights for everybody that that was not Hawaiian, number one, but restricted it only to Native Hawaiians, and we would have to go to the Land Use Commission, prove that we were Hawaiian, and prove that our ancestors had gathered those materials in the ahupua'a in which you lived, and then restricted those gathering rights to only the ahupua'a in which we lived. So there are several different versions. And so my daughter-in-law got the bill and shared it to me. She was at the law school at the time and said, we need to, you know, you might want to testify against this bill. So I did. And when I went there, I saw testimonials from Antipua, from Hoku, from other practitioners, from environmental agencies, from Sierra Club. And I was like, okay, so we sat through that and realized that this bill had passed right out of their committee and didn't listen to anything that we had said. None of the words that I said in that meeting mattered to them. None of the words that Antipua said in her testimony mattered. None of the words that Hoku said had mattered to this body of legislators sitting in front of me. So I got irritated and submitted another letter to the House bill, and by then dragged Mehana's kumu, Ala. I said, Ala, you have to come with me. So Ala went with me to the House bill and sat there, and there was OHA representatives there. And we, again, they listened, but at least the House bill held it, because by then we had mustered up additional testimony from the Hawaiian community and others. So the House bill was held, but the Senate bill was moving right along. And recognizing that we needed to get together, because I realized I was teaching and taking off from classes to do this, that we needed to get together and figure out how we were going to stop this bill, because we saw the potential that this bill would impact all of our gathering rights. What it was going to do is make us criminals. Hula people were going to be criminals, because if we went to the forest to gather our ferns to make our leis, to gather the kino lao for the gods for our uniki rituals, we would be criminalized. We would be arrested and thrown in jail. So, and I was like, okay, I would not be able to send my haumana out there and have them become the criminals. We needed to be at the forefront of this. So OHA suggested, we could use their office, and I reached out to all the kumus who had submitted letters, and Hoku came in with Keli'i Rachel, and Tipua brought in Kekuhi, Ala brought in Robert, and Pi'ilani and Alicia Smith came, and we met up at the offices of Hawaiian Affairs. And that was the first meeting of all of the kumu. And as we gathered to talk about what was to transpire, how we were going to do, we were thinking, my close companion was Momi Kamahele, who was working at Center for Hawaiian Studies. So we had made copies of the bills to distribute. We had an agenda, what we were going to do. And so Auntie Pua walks into the room, and we walk in, and she says, okay, Vicky, you call this meeting, you're in charge. I was like, I was hoping to pass it on to Auntie Pua, and was like, this, can you help guide us? No. She was just like, no, you call this meeting, you're in charge. And I was like, oh my God, okay. We had an agenda, we shared them, and so coming to discussion about what we were gonna do, and I said, maybe we can do a protest at the Capitol, and I'm thinking like from after work, like 3 to 6 p.m. And Auntie Pua says, no. It's Auntie Pua again. No, I'm not coming down with my halal. We're going to do a 24-hour vigil, and I'm going to sleep right there at the Capitol, and you all going to sleep with me. And we all was, yes, Auntie Pua. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a new experience, Do I need a sleeping bag? We need water. We got what else? Food. Okay, we're going to be there for 24 hours, and do we need a permit, And then Manu Boyd was working for OHA. So it was, we tasked him with getting the necessary, let the Capitol know we're going to come. Get us whatever permits, you folks in charge, OHA. Use your resources to allow us to gather. We were going to gather anyway, but it would be nice if we were gathering and not having to be arrested. That would be good. And we were all okay, all us kumus, being, So that's how that started. But in the planning of this, and we were going to do a press release, and we were going to raise funds, but OHA couldn't give us funds because they needed, 2 weeks to be able to process. And so, Keli'i Rachel with Auntie Hoku says, everybody whip out your checkbooks and give Vicky $250. Again, it was give Vicky the money. I was like, okay, now go get us advertising. So I had a bunch of money from the kumus and I was like, and get a press release done and get call a press conference. And we called a press conference, and I think one camera person came, no reporter. One camera took us a picture of us, and we were standing at ʻIolani Palace from outside, and they were not really interested in us and what we were gonna do. And I was like so disappointed. And then I called the advertiser and I said, okay, I have money, can I buy an ad? And this is in the middle of an election. So they were like, no, you need this to be camera ready, 2 weeks in advance. And I was like, yeah, but this is breaking news. And they were like, no, not. So I called KCCN, our Hawaiian radio station. I said, okay, I wasn't giving them all our money. I said, you got this money. How much can you? So they gave us 24-hour advertising from Monday to Tuesday, because our demonstration was 4 days after we had that meeting. We met on Friday, and Auntie Pua said, I'm coming back in 4 days, and we're going to do this. So I was like, okay, we have 4 days to organize. And in between those 4 days, I was calling everybody in the phone book on Oahu, say, hey, we're having a demonstration. Come down. You need to learn about this. And we tried as much as possible. And among that, I think Auntie Alicia wasn't there. I called her on the phone, and she showed up at the demonstration. And that's how she got involved with ʻīlio, her and PE. She brought PE and their pahu. So many of the kumus that we met for the first time, we met at the state capitol. But I remember the name. I want to get to the name.
Yeah. How did that name come about?
Yeah, we were sitting, and I don't know if you folks remember how we got the name. We were sitting in the office of Hawaiian Affairs, and we were like, okay, what we're going to call ourselves? And of course, it was Kekuhi that was, you know, sitting opposite the window and looking out, and the sky had this red tinged cloud outside of the window. And she said, ʻīlioʻulaokalani. And Auntie Pua looked out, we all looked out, and she said, Auntie Pua said, no, ʻīlioʻulaokalani. A dog-shaped cloud, tinged red, appeared outside on the horizons. And that, then we took apart, as kumus do, the name, ʻīlioʻulaokalani, the red, symbolizing, you know, danger. ʻīlio, hugely loyal to the owner, will defend their owner at the expense of its own death, will will bark and let everybody know. And when one barks, then the pack. And most of us were women, and we were okay being called bitches, you know. And so the kumu in that room just kind of shared all the mana'o, as kumus do, about all of the manifestations of this ʻīlioʻulaokalani dog-shaped cloud. And that's how the name came out. And that was really Kekuhi and Auntie Pua. We learned so much from each other that day, you know. And that was the first time that kumu hula gathered together to share ike from different schools. I'm going to stop there and let you guys go, because I could go on. I mean, I just love this story.
Auntie Pua, you know, that ceremony, right, that 24-hour ceremony that you, well, first the 24-hour protest, right, gathering, then turned into what today, we just accept, like the people today just think that that's how it always was, and this is just what we always do. But you really created the framework around that. Like, what was that? Why was it? Why was 24 hours important? You know, what was the significance of infusing in those mele, those drum dances, those chants, those pule, in order to get the result that was needed?
Do you want to go, Hoku, or?
Well, you know, one of the things that we were able to do, and we are grateful to Halawa Kekuhi, is that going back to Kaho'olawe time, Halawa Kekuhi and the Edith Kanakaole Foundation shared many chants in that movement. So people who were active in that movement had a handful of common ceremonial chants and behaviors that could be brought to bear. And so what happened when we were there is many kumuhula that perhaps had never been in protests or vigils like this came. And many of them were not aware of some of these chants and ceremonies. So we quickly went and printed up words. I don't know where they came from. Vicky probably had somebody go print up a choke plenty words. And then we broke up into little groups. I had one group here, and so had a group here, and so had a group here. And we taught the chants, because soon as the vigil began, everyone realized in order to participate, you need to know these chants and you need to know this protocol in order to really be a part of what is happening here. And they wanted to. So we broke up and try and get people to brought up to speed. And I believe that it became, like you said, now an automatic thing. We gather, we chant, kikopau. In those days, not everybody knew. And again, I will always be grateful to Edith Kanakaole Foundation and the kumu of that Halao Kekuhi, who freely shared all of these chants that we take for granted or view as being always here, yeah, always a part. And so when that first gathering occurred, and those of us who were coming from the neighbor islands, we came fully on trust. We didn't know what was going to be happening. He is running around like a crazy woman, trying to get everything organized, and all we knew is we're gonna go and we're gonna have 24-hour vigil and we're going to stay there. So no, you're not getting a hotel. So yes, we do need a car for everybody to get onto, but we're just going. And you bring your ipu, you bring your pahu, you bring your puniu, and we're going. And you get there, and as good hula students, we wait for directions. Yeah, we know how to do that. We know how to wait for directions. Because if you're not in charge, you wait for directions. And it had a revealing of what needed to happen and a coming together. If you didn't know the chants, never mind. Just bring your pahu and your ipu and sit in the circle. If you don't have a pahu or ipu, never mind. Sit behind in the next ring of the circle and the next ring of the circle. If you know one chant, chant that with us. You'll know the next one next time. And it just had this really inclusive welcoming of people. And even if you weren't a hula person, never mind. You come and learn these chants and you lift your voice, you can be here too. So it was very welcoming, very encompassing, very learning for people. And you just knew that you were part of something important. You may not have known all the idiosyncrasies of it, but you knew that you were part of something important. And when we gathered, that's what we knew.
That kind of gathering of mana, right? Bringing in people into the circle of to do pule, that has become kind of the recipe for success, right? And this is how we kill that bill, right? Is because this is how we stop that action, or this is how we create this action that we want to have happen, because we're gonna bring in all of this mana, if for lack of a better term, into this space to do these pule together. Yeah, and so people were being introduced to for the first time, because the hula world wasn't always that inclusive before, right? We were very much in our spaces until we felt comfortable with the people that we were going to work with. Yeah, and then and I'm maybe totally speaking out of turn, so you guys can just put me back if this is untrue. But this is one of those times where it's just like, whoa, this goes beyond the halal boundaries. This is now a community of hula people that we're all learning together. Now this is like the hula world kind of opening up beyond even just the halal, but to the lehu lehu.
And what was really wonderful about that are the kumu. I have to say that the kumu who came because they wanted to be a part of this. And we all know in our halal, the kumu is the point. What the kumu does, everybody else will follow. And so when our students see us sitting next to other kumu hula from other islands, from other communities, and sharing in voice and sharing with one another and saying, oh, you go over to so-and-so, they're over there, and you ask them about this, this, and this, they see and they trust that their kumu are trusting one another, so we trust everyone as well.
I think one of the most impressive things for me was when Auntie Pua, when I first showed up, I was just me and my pahu. And I was like, okay, Mommy, where are you? Because I'm here by myself. And waiting for other kumu to arrive. Because, you know, I wanted to be first. I didn't want to be late. Auntie Pua said, we're going to start at 12. I wanted to be there and get ready. And then she walked in with her whole halau. And I mean, I'm still emotional about that because the importance of that moment when you walk in with your whole halau and the mana, just the presence of your mana and your halau's mana, that we're going to carry this vigil. They knew how to carry this vigil. They knew the importance of this. They knew that they had to represent Hawaii Island because that legislation had come up partly from Hawaii Island. And that they knew that their mana was to guide all of our halau who really had never done ceremony like this before. We do hula, we celebrate our hula. But Auntie Pua, when she walked in with her body and her keiki, her children, her mo'opuna, and the alakai of their halau, that we're gonna carry this vigil for 24 hours. The magnitude of just their presence for me was huge. The commitment for us was huge. And we, as Oahu people, as Oahu halau, had to meet those expectations of halau that Auntie Pua laid down. You're gonna learn these mele. You're gonna learn this in 24 hours. We were all in the corner in the dark, you know, trying to put flashlight, because they didn't have iPhone with lights at that time.
Yeah.
We had literal flashlights, trying to learn our words, you know, memorize sections at a time that were, you know, and recognizing then, oh, I see the pattern in this mele. We learned so much. Na'au makua, look at the pattern. The helu, memorize the helu, the opposites. All of these things were like so revealing for those of us. And, you know, so my aloha to Auntie Pua and Hoku for their presence and their guidance in all of that. And we hope to carry on in those traditions. But she was so generous that when we talk about the generosity of Halau Okikuhi and how she ho'olaha, not just those mele, but, you know, all of the mele that are in their collection to bring our lahui of hula people together. It was huge. It was huge. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can talk.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, what really pissed me off, can I say pissed me off?
Yeah.
About this legislation is that they have already, for eons, for generations, already broken down the Hawaiians. They broke through the Hawaiians. They came in and had half Hawaiian babies, 3/4 Hawaiian, 1/4 Hawaiian babies, and all of our the cultural that we did wasn't good enough, and so our Hawaiians sort of moved over to look at a greater society and be like the greater society. So half of Hawaii was gone. You know, by the 1800s, after the 1800s, a lot of Hawaii is gone. And a lot of the Hawaiians are gone, and a lot of Hawaii is moving out as well. And so one thing about the hula is that, well, you know, people still planted kalo, so that tradition was still going on because it had to do with food. Fishing had to do with food, so that tradition was still going on. Other traditions didn't surface as well or didn't last as well. Okay, hula was almost gone as well. And so hula was kind of taken underground. And so you had a lot of kumu hulas who were being taught underground by certain teachers to carry on the dance. And it's not something that they came out, you know, into the broad light and performed to everybody. And so, when they came out with this particular legislation, I said, no, we've suffered enough, you know, and the fact that hula did survive to that point, to me, was a big deal. And then they come out and tell us we cannot go and pick our kinolao so that we can maintain that relationship between us and the forest and between us and the ocean. And because they don't understand why we're doing it and what we're doing. Yeah, that was not good. And so when we got together and Vicky says, okay, we're going to protest 6 hours. I said, no, we're going to protest 24 hours. And we're going to have ceremony each hour on the hour until those guys are tired of hearing us. That's too bad. We're going to stay there and do that. And and you know, and we have to be able to, you know, this is our turn on the earth, and we have to be able to step forward and do the best job we can, and we cannot let our kupunas down. And so this is one of the things that we do. So you don't let your kupunas down. I mean, they don't want you to protest and everything like that, but that's too bad. That's what we have to do now. And so we came up with that, that idea of protesting. But the idea of doing the 24 hours and each hour and the hour doing chants is because the chants that we do is the voice of our kupuna. And so it's a way of us to carry that on. And when we do the chants, the kupunas join in with the chants. And so it's not only us doing the chants, but it's hundreds more people that are lending their voice to that. And the great thing about doing the chants is that we begin to understand what the chants are about. Because a lot of times we do hula and we forget to really break down the chants so our students know what they're dancing about. But this is a good opportunity to get into the kumuhulas, and like the two kumuhulas said, it was a time when we were inclusive, and then I was going to be bossy because it was a time to be bossy, and I'm not always bossy, and I don't always talk a lot. But that was the time to be bossy, and to me it was, you know, it was my grandmother and her grandmother and her grandmother that I cannot do this, and so we came, and we did this all together, the ʻīlioʻula, and I like the fact of the ʻīlioʻulaokalani because the ula is a red color, but it's dangerous in the clouds. But it is also a color of sacredness. So the idea of the ula is sacred as well as dangerous. It has some kind of prohibition attached to it. And I like us as kumuhulas becoming a dog pack that can move ahead with this. And that's what we were at that 24 hours. We were the dog pack. And we howled every hour on the hour. And we called our ancestors to join us, and they joined us every hour on the hour. All those ancestors that knew those chants. And a lot of those chants were ancestral chants. It's a Ehomakaiki, of course, my mother made it up. So, but the great thing about my mother making up that chant is that it allowed people who didn't chant before to chant. What she was telling them is, it's all right to chant. And so she brought that chant out for everybody to do. But, you know, that's the direction we were heading to when we first started ʻīlioʻula and first hour on the hour, and everybody didn't chant really that great. But as we got through the night and then into the next day, yeah, everybody was better in chanting. And not only that, they could take it back to their halaus and perpetuate it within their halaus, and then allow it to go from one generation of students to the next generation to the next generation of Haumana. And so allow it to live. Ceremony to me was always part of hula. Hula was a tradition that's a little bit esoteric to me because it didn't have to do with eating, and it didn't have to do with preserving one of the some of the natural resources, but hula had to do with ceremony. And hula had to do with the chants that were done by kahunas and all of the different levels of kahunas, and that were composed by them, is the earlier chants that we do in hula. So one of the things that hula has done throughout the ages is maintain the words of our ancestors, has taken those chants and has done it. And to me, that's the reason for the tradition of hula, is to take and it's not stories, it's kind of and it's not message, it's directions. Take the directions that was composed by our kupuna and do it in movement, and using our bodies to show that this is how it is, and this is how it is. This is what the waves look like, and this is what the blooming of the flower is like, and this is why it is. To me, that was the worth of the tradition, is being able to take the words of your kupuna and put it into ceremony. So there is always a relationship between yourself, your kupuna, and the deities or the akua of nature. And then we become familiar with them. And then they become familiar with us. And so when we call out and we reach out, they can reach back. And so we have to get marked to that, to calling out and reaching out and then them reaching back. But to me, that was the worth of hula, the tradition of hula, is that you do the ceremony, you know who you're dancing to, you know who you're dancing about, and you do it to movements, and you use your body and do it to movements. And that's what they were suppressing. And then you have to pick certain kinds of greenery. And because the greenery connects you to a body of the forest, the mauli. The greenery connects you to the water and the rain. It is greenery that takes the rain, but it's also greenery that puts out the transpiration. So the cycle is there. And so what we're doing in hula is we're becoming part of that cycle. And when we have a kuahu, it tells us, yeah, you are part of that cycle. Okay. And so that's, to me, that's what hula was all about. And they cannot take away basic stuff of hula. What we gotta pick is what we gotta pick to dress ourselves with.
Mahalo for that. And one of the other things that you did with the ceremony, so that's super important. If you out there didn't hear or didn't translate what Auntie Pua just said about that, the significance of coming together through hula as the vehicle and the mechanism by which this bill that was introduced was threatening the very existence of hula. And the way to combat that, was to bring that hula into that space. One of the other things that you did was you insisted that every one of those kumus go back to their halaus and have their haumana, not only learn those chants, but learn their mo'oku oho. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a look. And for many of us, that was the first time we've ever had to be responsible for that knowledge. We may have had the auntie or the uncle or the cousin that did the genealogy, and then they put it in a book, and that book sat on the shelf, and every so often, but you made us responsible, each of us as hula people, to our own identity, right? And that, what you had said about that, those chants bringing those kupuna forward, right, in this space, you also made us bring our kupuna with us, right? And that's been a long, I know for many of us who were there that day, from that moment forward, any time that we spoke, we were never alone again, never. Right? We could be anywhere in the world, and we were never alone again, because we knew now we had the mechanics to learn our mo'okuahau, ingest it into and ho'opa'ana, all that, and then be able to recite it for our own needs, or if others needed to hear that too. And that was significant. It was a paradigm shift. It was if you're gonna fight a battle that threatens our relationship with our aina, we will bring aina through the chants and through the hula, forward to battle with you, right? Our sense of advocacy is gonna come from the practice, from a cultural.
And I think that day, and subsequent days that followed, whenever, well, that day, those who were in the capital, those who made the capital their office and their place of business, did not know how to behave.
Yeah.
They did not know, what do I do? At first, they would come to the railings to look over and see, what are these people doing? But as it continued and it grew and it swelled and the voices were raised, they knew that this was more than just a little gathering of people, that these voices that have come have been brought there for this one thing, and we were not going to go away. And I think they did not know how to handle this, and they did not know what to do. So, we were very happy to tell them what they should do.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do. We were very happy to tell them what they should do. But it was really the first time that they really saw the practice of hula brought to bear on something such as an important cultural statement, and, as Vicky started with, as a way of civil engagement, and to let our voices be heard in the way that we voice. Because as she shared, when she went to the way they voice, nobody listened. So this is how we voice what is important. And it never was received the same way again. Every time hula people gather to voice, they know they must listen, because that was the first time it was forced upon them. You must listen, and you will listen, because we're not going away.
Yeah. I think when the legislators first saw the first few hours, oh, look, they're doing hula, pa'i, and then
they're like tourists, they don't understand it.
Right. And then over the railing, and it's time for a hula performance. But as the intensity of the crowd swelled, and the voices swelled, and the reality that this was, for me, I look at this as at the intersection of arts and social justice. This is a social justice issue now. Yeah. And using hula to be the voice of how we interact with the legislature, they couldn't handle that. They're like, I met a legislator going up the elevator, and he says, Vicky, what did we do? I said, read the effing bill. Did you read the bill? You're making me a criminal. hello, read the bill. Did you read it? And so those kinds of things where hula people gathered and the strength of our ceremony, because now, as I said, nobody wanted to talk to us earlier. And all of a sudden, we're in this, and every TV station and every reporter wanted to talk. And I was like, yeah, talk to the hand. We're in ceremony. We'll let you know now when we are wanting to talk to you. And we will deliver our message when we are ready. But do not interrupt, because we're in ceremony. And for the first time, hula people gathered together under Auntie Pua's guidance and shared ceremony that was then so sacred and yet so free, ho'olaha, to the lahui and anybody that wanted to participate and learn about ceremony. It was not kapu.
Yeah.
It was free. It was Noah. And that then just strengthened the movement, because everybody was welcome. And like you said, and Hoku, inclusive, this inclusiveness of inviting other halau that we had never met before, and their haumana, and just full of people that just showed up. And they were...
I know relationships were formed and continue to this very day, because between students as well as between hula, that continue to this very day.
Yeah.
And another thing is that when we're doing mele'oli like that, or dancing mele'oli, see, we don't own that oli. That oli was passed on down. And we may own the movement and the choreography, but that we make up. But the oli is for everyone. And so we cannot say, okay, no, this is kapu, this is kapu.
Yeah. I think the other thing, Hannah, the connection that happened for me at that was being able to connect the hula the body of movement and the body of hula that we had all learned and had been practicing for generations to the political movement. So now I remember going with your kumu. Ala called me and said, Vicky, I need your help. And I said, yeah. She says, we have to go to this. I have to go to this meeting. You got to come with me. It's about the electric company going to put the poles up along Ahila Ridge Line. And we had been, since ʻīlio started, we had been working on getting the cultural impact statement embedded into the environmental impact statement. So now you have to do a cultural impact statement. You have to do a CIS along with the environmental impact statement. It's now law. So since ʻīlio, we pushed that bill forward. So I was sitting there with Ala, and this guy got up and he said, okay, I did the cultural impact statement, and there's not going to be any impact on the ridge line moving up there.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm sitting there, I was like, who are you? And what? So I said, after everybody, I said, excuse me, I have a couple of questions for the guy that did the cultural impact statement. Yeah. Who did you interview for this CIS? And he said, I interviewed the State Historic Preservation person and somebody at OHA, and I interviewed somebody at another DLNR. And I was like, okay, so excuse me. I said, so were they Native Hawaiian? Oh no, but they work for the State Historic Preservation, and they work for I said, no, that wasn't my question. This is a cultural impact statement, the impact on Native Hawaiians. So you interviewed 3 people then? 3 for this study. So were they Hawaiian? No. Were they a cultural practitioner? Well, no, but I said, no, that wasn't the question. Were they a cultural practitioner? No. I said, you interviewed 3 people, neither of whom were a cultural practitioner or a Native Hawaiian. And you're telling me that there's no impact. Okay, I work at UH Manoa. Did you interview me? No, but I said, okay, but but my students go up to Wa'ahila. We know the name of the winds and the rains at Wa'ahila. We watch it move. We watch the movie. We know what kind of plants are up there. Did you interview John Lake and his hamana? You know, Kapono'ai, who goes up that? Who did you interview? Not one Hawaiian, not one cultural practitioner, and you're going to base your entire CIS on those 3 people, just because they work for agencies, neither of whom are Hawaiian, and neither of them. Making the connection for that, Antipua and Hoku and Mehana, was critical to this. I said, and I looked at Hawaiian Electric, I said, go get your money back. You got shit. Really? Well, can I say that?
Yeah.
I did say that in the testimony.
Because it's something natural.
Yeah, right. It's natural for us. Yeah, because you know, so they were eager. I said, no, Hawaiians should be doing the CIS. Hawaiians should be engaged in this activity. Hawaiians should be providing you this information, not somebody who works for, like, who is like an agency person. This is exactly why this is wrong. And you need to do this all over again. And you cannot build on top of them. But that was the connection. Place names, rain names, plant forms. Who are the cultural practitioners in that ahupua'a? The connection that was so clear and made it so, I mean, I guess that's the political part, right? The political and the historical and the cultural, trying to put all of those things together. Historically, our kupuna left all of that information in our mele.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's our job to go get it. Our job to go get it.
Absolutely.
You know, I think after hearing what Vicky was saying, the outcome of all of that, and we, in looking at all of the 3 of you, one of the outcomes of what we did at ʻīlio, what continued to be done by ʻīlio from that moment on, even to this point, was also to raise within the next generation those people that can do that. We send our children to Hawaiian immersion schools. We send our children to college. We send them to be able to take the jobs, to do the jobs that non-Hawaiians speaking for us used to do. So from that time, an outgrowth of taking command of our rights, taking command of our rights, also meant, I believe, for many of us, not only us sitting here, but those that participated in these vigils, was to also take command of those positions that make decisions, and take command of getting our children, our grandchildren, our students into those educational sites, into their experiencing here, there, and the other place, to get them into these positions of decision making, and to be able to be the ones that can have these good inputs into these places that are needed. And I believe that generated thinking process also came out of the things that were done through ʻīlioʻulaokalani and through the various political actions that were taken with the culture. Yeah. And so I think I'm looking at Vicky and looking at Pua, I know your students, your family that are there. And that is where they are, because that's what we saw also needed to happen.
Created, definitely the work that was done at that time created a generation of what I term as like mixed breeds, like in leadership, in the leadership realm, because before, a leader, even a Native Hawaiian leader, looked very different from what a Native Hawaiian leader looks like today, right? The Native Hawaiian leader, you know, that people acknowledge, right? A trustee or a legislator or a business owner, right? Had a very assimilated look, to them. You know, going back to what Antikua was saying about how our society was then, you know, kind of formed over the years and manipulated to look a certain way, and certain things were pulled out of it, right, and left, you know, by the wayside. But I think what you guys created in that time period, right, was leadership that is now, you have PhD kumu hulas, right?
Yep.
You have people there, we
Yep.
speak,
Hula with degrees.
you know, the languages of everything through the lens, right, through the eyesight, the viewplane of a Native Hawaiian rooted in their identity, right, that comes with them a cultural practice, right. It would be very hard to find a emerging Native Hawaiian leader today that doesn't have a cultural practice associated with them, right? Because it made them like, this is what, you know, for me, sitting in that rotunda, you know, not only the first time, but the second time sitting up on Wa'ahila Ridge, testifying in Waimea for Mauna Kea, you know, and all the way to the Mauna Kea movement today, right? It meant that leadership looks different now. It has a cultural component to it, or is based in culture, and has these other code switching skill sets in there that allow the Native Hawaiian leaders of today to be, again, rooted in practice, and then have all these other skill sets that look like more traditional American leadership, right? The abilities to speak the knowledge of law and semantics and you know, or expertise in a certain area, you know. So yeah, to you know what you were saying, Hoku, I think I connect that back, you know, from the Renaissance era of the language revitalization movement to Kaho'olawe, and that they're starting to have that nexus of Hawaiian identity and a political movement, right, through to this time, to the ʻīlioʻulaokalani, you know, and beyond. You know, my question is, what is the, you know, why was ʻīlioʻulaokalani like necessary at that time? I have my own answer, but what do you think it was, looking back, right, in hindsight? Why was it necessary at that time, seeing what you guys have seen in the last 20, 24 years or so?
I think that the kumu hulas and those that were around the kumu hulas were a different set of Hawaiians. And by a different set of Hawaiians, I mean, we were educated because our parents pushed it, because they know that, you know, things are breaking down prior to them and in their lifetime. And because, you know, even my mother was looking at the mountain and seeing this building come out. And oh my goodness, what did we not do? And it was kind of sad. And so they sent all the kids to school. We have to have these degrees. And, but we also have to know who we are as Hawaiians. And so they provided that for us, that group of, that generation of parents. You go to school, yeah, and don't forget your Hawaiians, you know. And so when we became the Kumuhulas, we were very much into the fact that, yeah, we are Hawaiians. And we have that strength to maintain that. And we are kumuhulas, so we have this tradition that we have to carry on. And so we were at a different level of strength from our parents. You know, it's something our parents wanted to do, but they did not have the wherewithal to do it. And so, but we did. And for a lot of us kumuhulas, we know how to talk. That's why Vicky was good to talk. And she was good to talk. So we know how to talk. So we know how to talk in today's world. We know how, and yet we know our traditions. And so we can bring both of those together and strengthen it even more. And hopefully the next generation, the level of strength as far as Hawaiian things are concerned will be even greater. And so,
yeah. I think halau today over the past, we've all been teaching our halal for more than 40 years now, and so over the years, when we look back at what we've been doing since ʻīlio made that connection, made that awareness of the halal, and all of us have gotten degrees in addition to that, right? So we're educated, like you said, Auntie Pua. We have a cultural grounding, right?
Yeah.
We have the ability to express ourselves, but we also have been able to make that political connection, which is different from all the other kumu in the past. We've made that, our way of ku'e is very different. We control the ku'e.
Yeah.
We're in control of that. We don't protest like other people protest. They have violent protests. They're like throwing things, and they get encountered with the police, and we control our people. We control their behavior. When I say control in the way that they behave because they've been groomed in halal.
Discipline.
And discipline. The discipline that comes out of halal is, like I say, we're the queens of our halal. It's not a democracy, it's a monarchy.
Yeah.
But that structure in halal has helped leadership develop within our halal. So we've been building this leadership culturally, now politically, and now activism. So they know how to activate our community, but in a way that is pono, for our people, and for the way that hula should be done, and dignified and disciplined. So that is different, the way we've learned to do this with your guidance. We have developed discipline and dignified way of ku'e. And that commands respect. It commands respect from others. They cannot treat us like they treat other protesters, right?
Yeah.
Even when we're arrested, like at Mauna Kea at Tipua, that was so hurtful for all of us. It was done in a dignified and respectful manner. And that was, that's a lesson for everybody, because we went under protest, but it was dignified, it was disciplined. We controlled it. We were able to control the lahui that was there, because at a moment they would have risen up. At a moment, just a lift of your little eyebrow they would have risen up. And you controlled it. You controlled that moment. Nobody else. The police may have think that they were in charge, but you were in control of all of that. So we continually learn, and we continually benefit from the lessons that you have shared with all of us. But I will say, as we were all there, whether I was not on the Mauna, I was at DLNR at that point. I was protesting in front of their doors at that time.
With our pahus.
With our pahu.
When I got arrested on the mountain, I was doing iku mau mau, and I hurt my legs when I went sailing to Mokumanamana, so I had to walk with a walker. I looked just pitiful. I thought they would have pity on me, but they didn't. They still arrested me. So I was chanting iku mau mau, and then my grandchildren just started joining it. So when I went to court the last time, they were questioning the officer that arrested us, and so the offensive, the attorney that was against us, I forget what you call it.
Prosecutor. The prosecutor.
Yes. Thank you. The prosecutor asked the officer if he understood Hawaiian, and because he wanted to know what I was saying in the chant. So he felt like the chant was something negative. But that's another thing they have to realize. Our chant don't have negative things in it. If we're gonna do negative things, we gotta go home and do it by ourselves. But not in public, not with everyone around us, and not including everyone. We don't do negative. And so I was kind of surprised at this.
Yeah, just taking off on what Pua said, unfortunately, because of how people are towards us, they think that anything we do is negative towards them, when they're not even included.
They're not included
in the words themselves. They think we're sending them bad jujus or something. They're not even included in this. It is entirely something different. And to me, when I see that all the time, I see that it is because they know they have done wrong to us. And what they expect from us is retaliation, because that's what they would do. They would retaliate, but that's not what we do.
Yeah.
How we retaliate is we call our kupuna even more to strengthen us. That's what carries us. We're not. If we wanted to send you some bad jujus, we wouldn't do it in front of everybody.
We wouldn't include everybody.
Yeah. But I know that that's why, because we still are fighting with the whole idea that Hawaiian language is the language of our state, and we should be able to use it everywhere.
Yeah.
And so when those who don't understand think we always saying something bad, and that is farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah, we gotta tell him that if we wanted to speak badly, we would speak your language. We would,
so you understand it.
We would try to make it so you don't understand. We would tell you exactly how we feel about you, and we do so all the time in English. Yeah,
in English.
Yeah. And thanks, because when I saw you do Ikumama, I was with Auntie Vicky at Dan Lenar that day. But when we saw the footage of that, coming, because it was just being live streamed everywhere. And it took me back because I learned Ikumama, Oakea, Eho Mai, Na'amakua, all in 1990 at the vigil. Right?
Yeah.
And I knew what you were doing at that time. Ikumama was for all of the Kanaka up there to know that we work together.
Stand together.
Stand together. Yeah.
Together. And if we maintain that, the hopena is the va'a. Right? The hopena is the good result that we want.
And moving forward.
But constantly that call for, that call for discipline, that call for strength, bringing forward. And I was just like, wow, the genius in our kupuna's words, but also in our practice today, led by you folks, to do that, to be able to signal not only our brains, right, and our hearts, right, our fearless hearts, right, really go to the core of our existence, to give all those young people that were up there and the older people up there, right, some direction. This is direction. Ikumama has the direction.
Yeah.
Right there. The chant lays it out, right? And that's been a theme over and over again, with ʻīlio. We're coming to the close of our hour, or we might have passed it. I'm actually not sure.
I think we passed, yeah.
But, I wanted to just highlight some of, while I let you guys ponder a final question of what you hope to see in the future, in the next generation of hula people, and or the next generation of Native Hawaiian leaders, right? I would just like to, so as I let you ponder that, I'm just gonna highlight some of the things that sprouted out of ʻīlioʻulaokalani that I can just pull from the top of my head, right? One being the future movements started in the early 2000s on Mauna Kea, right? First with the Keck observatories, right now with TMT, but I remember ʻīlio being a strong presence in those early testimonies and hearings. Also, Auntie Vicky started a political party, right?
Aloha Aina, you know?
Hawaiian party was not started in 2020 or 2019 or 2018.
No.
No, it was started by Auntie Vicky and a bunch of other like-minded people way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they're actually candidates that they ran candidates, you know, for office. I know one was on Maui, Auntie Momi was here on Oahu. Also the nexus with the kahea, with what we know today as kahea, and that's the
Hawaiian Environmental Alliance, right? Yeah.
right? And there's an alliance between cultural practitioners, lawyers, advocates, you know, and other social justice warriors that came out of, you know, the work of ʻīlioʻulaokalani. And then also on the ʻīlioʻulaokalani Foundation side, right, which would then turn into the Lalakea Foundation.
Foundation.
Sprouted out the hula conference, right? The International Hula Conference that successfully ran, you know, every 4 years and went throughout the Paeaina and back. Started in Hilo and ended in Hilo, but was a gathering of hula people that, you know, that was unlike anything that was done before, you know, and really allowed the hula community and hula world to expand its community. Right now, wherever we go in the world or amongst hula people, they reflect on experiences that they've had at Halawaola, at Ka'ahahula or Halawaola, and see themselves, because they were engaged in ceremony, right, see themselves almost like a kinship, right, throughout kumu hula and hula practitioners who participated in it. And from that spawned a lot of the different showcases that happened that also traveled to different places, right? From Kilohi all the way to Hi'iaka, which is the last one, right, was able to showcase different elements of hula, again, to a larger audience. Am I forgetting any of the other directors? Oh, ʻīlio also did, which comes up every so often, the Pualani Declaration, which talked about the importance of intellectual property and intellectual rights to our own one kuana ike, but also our modern day, even the things that we create today as Native Hawaiians, right? So the Kalani Declaration, you know, has been one of those things that every time our intellectual property gets questioned or anytime guidance is needed, right, they refer back to that. And that was in the early 2000s. Auntie Vicky and a young team.
All of us.
All
of us in here.
A young team of, you know, that's when you guys were
attorneys, right?
Young lawyers, you know, to kind of really engage.
Class, you know, was so many of them.
Another offspring, right, of ʻīlioʻulaokalani.
Yeah, and I think one of the offsprings was also scholarly. We push scholars out of our halau, out of ʻīlio. We understood that we could fight the cultural, but we needed our next generation to be scholars and to write and to be able to, you know, produce scholarly work, so that they were both culturally grounded and educationally, scholarly, had a strong educational foundation to be able to move forward. And so I think that was really another outcome. While we don't have a title for that, that was clearly where all of our people, I know my students came out of this ʻīlio. That was Kavika McKay, Kaleo Manuel, Kim Evans, all came out of ʻīlio and went into that urban planning, went into the field, became, you know, so that, and then Auntie Pua's, you know, all of us, all of our kids, but also then the next generation of kumuhula coming out from all of us, you know, the you from Auntie Ala, you know, all of hers, and our kids, my son Jeffrey, and, you know, Auntie Pua, Kekuhima, you know, Lono. So all of them, that next generation, we see when we talk about the future, I'm not worried about the future. We have developed, we have instituted this idea that they have kuleana now. all of our haumana have kuleana that they owe to our ancestors, to our aina, to and the pilina, to our lahui.
You know, I also feel that, you know, when Vicky was talking about scholarship, and when Pua was talking about scholarship, one of the things that if you went to college that was disconcerting is that there was no one to quote that was Hawaiian. Nobody, everybody that you had to do your research in, even in Hawaiian things, were non-Hawaiian.
Yeah.
And so now as you put out papers and PhDs and all of that, now the Ike, so this is kind of like in the words of my mother. Now you can stand toe to toe with them and throw your Ike level, because that's what they recognize. We always knew that we had the Ike, but now we fight with their own weapons, and their own weapons is intellect in books and in being able to be quoted and to be able to get PhDs.
Yeah.
And so we go, we're not justifying our existence by getting their PhD and writing papers and reports. We're not justifying that. We are saying this is what is important here in Hawaii that you never recognized before. And we went, because you never did, we went, we learned your way, and now we can stand toe to toe to you. You're still not going to understand us. But
and they have Hawaiians teaching those classes.
Right.
You know, and a lot of dissertations are regurgitated information. And I think that one of the information that is not used is the information that we have in chants. Melioli. We have a lot of melioli, just thousands of them. And all of the meliolis are put out by our kupunas. And so, to me, that is the best. If we're looking for references, that is the best reference to me.
Absolutely.
And the kind of work that you've done.
And so that's another level of scholarship.
Right. And the work that you've done with Papaku Makavalu, the work that Kikuhi's done with Halaʻohiʻa, right?
Yeah.
It really kind of flipped the paradigm, right?
Yeah.
It actually said, okay, educators, yes, you know this breadth of knowledge,
Yeah.
but this is what is important. This should be placed as your foundation, right? And you guys have really kind of, to me, flipped the paradigm on what people who are educators, people who are experts in fields that include our Hawaii, right? Whether they're botanists or volcanologists, right? Meteorologists, right? Like if you're in this field, you may have an expertise, but it is this Ike, right, that you're missing, right? That we're gonna share with you that now can put you at balance too, right? So it's one, you guys have you've empowered Native Hawaiian to be able to assume those spaces, right? But you've also course corrected, for lack of a better term, those who are doing this kind of work in our Native environments amongst our Native children, you know, and said, here, wait, they didn't teach you this when you got your degree.
Yeah.
But you need to know this. You need to learn what was in the chants, right? Yeah, so lucky the people who are, you know, us people coming, you know, around today, that we can benefit from what you guys have created, right, all these years.
So for me, I am not worried, because I feel that looking at the other two ladies, we still have plenty work we want to do. We still have plenty work we want to do. But I feel confident that we have also laid very strong foundations for others to stand upon and walk forward from as well. We not POW, but it is providing that we have provided that foundation. So I'm not worried that it will not move forward, because I believe it will.
Yeah, because Auntie Pooh gonna come back and haunt us.
Yeah, I am.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
I keep thinking, okay, I'm POW, you know, because I'm too
No,
old.
no,
But I cannot. You know, I said, oh, I know this. He said this about this. No, that's wrong. And so I'm gonna try and correct him or
yeah.
give him more information so he has a better reference.
But I think we're
But yeah,
comfortable with that we can choose then what we want to engage with now,
yeah,
because we know we have the next generation of practitioners that are engaged already, that are doing the work already, and that when it's necessary, yeah, give us a call. We give the three a call. It was like, okay, let's go.
That's gonna be our trick when we hear Auntie Pua or Auntie Vicky or Hoku saying, "Oh, I think I pow." I think I'm just gonna kind of sit back and be
no,
like,
I cannot power.
gonna come to you guys and, "Hey, look what this person said about our kupuna," and then boom, you guys back.
Oh,
Yeah.
that connection.
Okay, that's not fair. That's how to get us going.
Shut.
Auntie Pua, what are your thoughts for the future, for the next generation?
For the what?
For the next generation or the future, what do you hope to see?
I think it's not so much the next generation, it's maybe the generation after that I worry about. Okay, because the next generation I'm not worried about. I think they're on a good path. But I think that for all of those that are Hawaiian and do things Hawaii, they need to dig deeper. Because if they think they know everything, they don't. And if, today I'm at almost 84, I think I know everything I don't. And I still find things I don't know. And it's exciting for me. And it keeps my life going and my blood flowing. And so I think for the two generations after me, my great-grands, I think that's one of the things that will continue to move them along, finding the unknown that allows you to live in this cycle of life, this cycle that we live in. Okay. So yeah, the unknown is there.
Oh, mahalo for that. Well, for all of you guys who are out there watching this program right now, this was a rare, special occasion that you should all be honored to have witnessed. I think this is the first time we've gotten these three wahine into a space to reflect on such a powerful movement that they were involved, that they created and were involved with, that many of us take for granted today. We take everything that we have been participating in as far as political movement and civic engagement as if that's how it always was. No, it took these three women along with their friends to create a space that was uncomfortable, right? To create a space that was beyond, was risky, right? Because it had never been done before in that manner, right? Create a space that allowed for the masses to join into, right? And giving what was once held very close as far as their ikekupuna and their cultural practices, and allowed the masses to participate in, knowing that it would become, or unknowingly, it would become one of the biggest movements that have propelled us into what is just so normal today, as how we engage in politics, how we engage with big business, I engage with any threat to our communities, right? So on behalf of the organizers of La Hoihoi Ea, Imai Winchester and his crew of incredible volunteers that put this together every year, and for myself as one of those young haumana who sat in that rotunda in the back of her kumu, Entilena Ala, or Kumu Hula Lena Ala Kalamahaini, along with my hula sisters and now my hula family, because you're right, it did connect all of us. I thank all of you for your bravery, your courage, and your wisdom, for being able to have created a platform that has allowed our people to know themselves, to express themselves, to assert themselves, and to never be fearful again of encountering the challenges that we do. And yes.
And I have one more thing to say.
Yep.
I have one more thing to say. I'm grateful for your presence, because your presence is to me Leinaʻala. And she was always one of our comrades, and we always was in it together to move ahead. So I'm grateful for your presence.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So look forward, again, go to La Hoihoi Ea and their page on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, and wherever else you get your news from, or directly at their website to look at all the other programming coming up. Again, and I forgot to mention, that's right, I forgot in the introductions to mention, we do have 2 kaukas on here, right? We talked about the convergence, and I forgot in my introductions to honor Kauka Pualani Kanahele and Kauka Hokulani Holt, you know, who are also kumu hula, you know, on there. But thank you for bringing my kumu forward, Auntie Pua.
Oh yeah.
You know, and Auntie Vicky and Hoku for also always creating a space for her.
Yeah, thank you.
And her presence.
Always.
Yeah. And so, e kala hui e, mahalo nui. Hopefully, you as much as I have in this short hour or so, and we will see each other soon.
Yeah, almost 2 hours.
Wait, my ʻīlio is there's my ʻīlio waiting for go walk. He's been pawing at my leg. It's like.
So ahui ho kako.
Okay.